3 hours?
Yeah, that's all we got.
We had IT issues, so the laptop's running on battery.
Okay.
Camera on, everything is laptop.
We'll get her done. We'll get her done. Good afternoon. I'm Councillor Gary Waterfield. The seventh meeting of the Committee of the Whole for the Corporation of the Town of Perth will come to order at 5:30. Going to 2.1 in the agenda, Councillor Bolt.
Moved by myself that the agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting of May 7th, 2024 be adopted as presented.
All those in favor? Unanimous, carried. Number 3, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest and general nature thereof? Mayor Brown.
I have a pecuniary interest in regard to the sale of lands in the Perth Moore corridor, and I will be leaving the chambers at that point.
That's item 7.2. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Duly noted. Thank you. Item number 4, public meeting under the Planning Act as required. There is nothing scheduled. Adoption of minutes. Councillor Smith.
I move that the minutes of the regular Committee of the Whole meeting held on April 2nd, 2024 be approved.
All those in favor? Unanimous, carried. This evening, we have 2 delegations. 6.1, we have Karen Knapp, CEO and Principal Consultant, and Pat Robitaille, Manager of Tourism, Arts and Culture, KLB Consulting and TANT Consulting. I believe one of you are present. You're welcome to come forward. We very much look forward to your presentation, and it's good that you're here as well, Kathy.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I have Pat here with us today, and Kira is joining us online as well. But what happened was Council approved the support behind the creation of an economic development marketing plan. And through a tendering process, we were happy to hire KLB Consultants, which includes Pat and Kira. So I think most of you have spoken to one of their team members over the past few months, and they've generated a report for us. So they're coming here to give us a high-level overview of some of the findings and recommendations that come through. I just wanted to give that backgrounder. Pat's going to walk us through it, but if there's any questions that come from a staffing standpoint, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. Thank you so much for welcoming me today. It was a lovely drive in, absolutely beautiful day. My name is Pat. I work for KLB Consulting. We're a values-based consultancy. We work in economic development, which is quite an umbrella term, as I'm sure you're all aware. We work with some businesses. We tend to work a lot with nonprofits, municipalities, First Nations in developing strategic plans, fundraising plans, marketing efforts, branding efforts. So for this project, we actually collaborated on this project with our colleagues and collaborators, TANT Consulting, to create a plan sort of as robust and comprehensive as possible in light of the task at hand. So essentially, jumping into the project, we took a look at the Economic Development Master Plan, which was the document that we're looking to market. And in beginning the stages of sort of looking to market the materials found in that plan, recognized that there was a need to maybe backtrack just a little bit and think about the readiness component of getting ready to market a space for newcomers. So specifically looking at the Economic Development Master Plan, it was Action 3 from the plan for promoting Perth that was relevant to our project. And the objectives of the marketing plan is to attract new residents, attract business and investment, facilitate community growth, build brand equity. And those were the 4 main objectives. Actually, you know what? I might get you to change the slide up on the screen so that we're on. Yeah, I'll give you a heads up each time I'm flipping through here. So the 4 objectives of the plan were set in place, and creating the plan involved certain methodology. And there is a particular methodology we apply to majority of our projects where we're going to do some desk research. We then move into a consultation phase, sort of build out a SWOT analysis of those materials and findings, and proceed into our recommendations. And each step is sort of met with checking in to ensure that we're all on the same page as we're moving forward. So for the initial stages of getting into desk research, we're looking at best practices, other data, comparative analysis of other communities that have put forth similar efforts. We look at the local economy, we look at community strengths, we look at growth and development challenges, desired town image, ideal residents and visitors, contributors to growth, and effective strategies. And while desk research does quite plays quite an important part in informing, discovering these things, a big part of this is feedback from the community. So I will just get you to flip to the next slide for me. And so in making this as comprehensive as possible, we wanted to hear from different community interests and stakeholders. And so this project involved conversations with the chamber, the BIA, town staff, the mayor, council, residents and community groups, local immigration partnership, the Lanark Renfrew division, as well as Algonquin College faculty and students. So like Kathy mentioned, this is a very high level sort of look at this plan. It does get quite comprehensive within, but just to summarize those conversations in a very brief fashion, what we heard was that Perth is diverse, it's authentic, it's charming, it's community-centered, sustainable, and inclusive. It's a small town appeal, has small town appeal rather, with safety and closeness. Desire for more activities and services, especially in evenings and weekends, was something pointed out as something desired by current residents. Calls for greater diversity in amenities and cultural representation, as well as calls for more housing and daycare options. We can flip to the next slide, please. So based on the conversations and desk research, we started to get a clear idea, and what started to emerge was what target segments are really going to play into who we're trying to reach with this plan, and who we're suggesting Perth would want to reach, and who, the town might be able to prepare themselves to reach these audiences. These are segments that would be embraced newcomers that are going to bolster economic activity in the area and achieve the goals that we're looking to achieve in marketing the economic development plan. So these segments, there were 3 main segments and then sort of a breakdown into sub-segments from there. But generally looking at the high level 3 main segments, we're looking at families, newcomers, and commuters or remote workers. So for families, some of the characteristics or interests, and there is some overlap here, but there's an interest in schools, there's an interest in parks, the family events that Perth has to offer, the safety of the community, as well as, the last point here has a mention of proximity to metropolitan areas, but that still plays into something that families are going to enjoy as well. And in newcomers, the fact that Perth has a potential for inclusivity, it has support services and the potential to develop those services quite robustly, and as well education here. And with commuters and remote workers, some of the draw in the area is the wise and important investment of high-speed internet access here with Gigafiber, the peaceful living, proximity to major metropolitan areas, as I've mentioned. And the sub-segments that sort of come from these main segments are, digital nomads, folks who are working that really can work from anywhere, or if they do have to be in head office in a major city, they can do that once in a while and have space to do that on their own. Government workers was another sub-segment, and there's a few more listed within the document. I'll get you to flip to the next slide for me. And so part of what built out, again, the identification of what these target segments are is understanding the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that the research and consultations exposed in our eyes with what is happening here in Perth right now. So strengths, we've touched on some of these, but strong community ties here. There's a ton of natural beauty, as I'm so thankful I got to see on my drive in. There's supportive business environments. There's excellent internet infrastructure. Again, this is very high level. Within the document, we go into quite a bit of detail and list quite a much more comprehensive list of each of these itemized things. But weaknesses, there was a recurring theme of sort of scarce housing, scarcity in childcare, limited nightlife for what some maybe younger urban folks that might be newcomers to the area would be looking for. There is no public transit readily accessible. And as well, it is a concentrated economy, which actually I see more as being an opportunity than anything. But in getting to the next category of opportunities, there's, the opportunity to attract immigrants and newcomers. There's an opportunity for remote working. There's an opportunity for tourism potential beyond what already exists. And there's an opportunity for new economic policies like the film industry support that was built into this plan as well. And then threats, there is an aging demographic here in Perth. So looking to subsequent generations and next generations and ensuring that Perth is prepared to attract those audiences and, and attracting families with children and hoping to retain those children and keeping the younger generation in Perth so that as the generations go by here, that we're setting Perth up to have economic activity and to be stable in its workforce. There are climate vulnerabilities that are, those are natural to anywhere in the world. We're seeing it more in our winters now where things are a little bit, they're changing, winter sports and winter events aren't necessarily what they have been traditionally. There's external economic shifts. And there's also competition from urban centers attracting folks that could potentially end up here. And setting this as the stage, I'll have you flip to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. In having this sort of set as the stage and forming and acting as sort of like the pillars of the project and the backbone of the project, I guess, if you will, launching into the recommendations, we really recognize the idea to take a two-phased approach. It is one thing to market something effectively, but it's more important in this context to ensure that the community is ready and the infrastructure of the town and what the town has to offer is ready for the audience that it's attempting to attract. So we decided for this plan to break things into two separate, distinct phases with implementation guidelines. The first being an enhance and prepare phase. So if this are looking at this as a 5-year plan, the first couple years focuses much more on understanding perhaps some of the areas of opportunity, perhaps addressing some of the weaknesses that have been mentioned, like housing, at least the potential for developing or creating incentivized housing in the area to have properties ready for people to move into. So that's an example of readiness components. And within that distinct phase, there are 10 specified recommendations that we feel should be looked at ahead of looking at engaging and attracting in phase 2. And so in that phase, it's looking at more of the traditional approach to marketing where there are specific efforts laid forward to attract those specific target segments that we've identified. I will get you to flip to the next slide for me, please. Enhance and prepare initiatives. So the initiatives for the phase 1 portion of the project, this is where you're addressing gaps in things like, say, childcare and the housing needs that we had heard about in the community. This could be upgrading infrastructure to support a diverse and growing population. I know the town has made reference in this project and in the consultation phase that there is a lot of really great community infrastructure here, but that it is from, sort of previous decades. And those are things that are going to need to be looked at some point. Those are big infrastructure investments, and they might not preface or fall into the timeline of this plan. But I think just becoming aware of what does need to be addressed and what could be addressed ahead of targeting an audience to set up shop here and to bring their business here. And also efforts to bolster support for newcomers. So that could be language supports, it could be newcomer events. Web tools are a recommendation here of just establishing websites and digital toolkits that speak to those target demographics and really tell them why they would want to be situated in a place like Perth. And I just want to highlight, like, newcomers is a very broad term in this project too. I mean, newcomers could be somebody moving from a county over. It could be somebody coming from Quebec. It could be somebody coming from overseas. It could be an immigrant. The idea of newcomer events is quite wide. I mean, this is just thinking about what sorts of events and opportunities can Perth embrace to appeal to the audience that they want to attract to ultimately set themselves up for future economic success here. Next slide, please. In the engage and attract strategies, I mean, this is coming to sort of like the basics of marketing, I would say, of developing a strong local brand and narrative. I think that already exists in this town. I think there is a big identity here that's already established. I think enhancing in the previous phase could lead to even more identification of the brand and narrative moving forward. But definitely this part of the strategy and the implementation is looking at getting across the message of what Perth is and what Perth is looking for. And also targeted campaigns and events designed to attract identified demographics. There are rural workforce fairs and different opportunities that we've identified in the plan that could be useful in getting to the audiences that Perth is looking to get to. Next slide, please. We also looked at economic opportunities through filming as it was identified as a priority. The film industry is growing and it's had an impact on communities, particularly around here. We made some interesting discoveries about the film industry in our research phase, sort of understanding that particularly for Perth, it's situated in an interesting geographic spot because a lot of the production houses operate out of Ottawa. And when they aren't a certain distance from the town they're filming in, there's no obligation for them to necessarily source their catering and house folks in accommodations. So what can wind up happening in a lot of communities around here is that folks come in and film for the day, but they use catering from out of the region, and they use they bus people in and out. So the economic benefit of the film industry, just depending on how you go about it and how it is structured and how folks are incentivized, sometimes can be not as maybe large or impactful as it's hoped to be. But nonetheless, I think it's very, very, very important for Perth to chase down these opportunities. Filming provides a lot of opportunity for a town, awareness being one of the many, benefits, the economic activity it can drum up. So for this plan, knowing that Perth lacked a structure for the filming process, we developed a film policy based on researching a number of different municipalities around the country, particularly in Ontario and Northern Ontario, and understanding how they go about the process of implementing film policies and developing film policies. And for the film policy, essentially filming is broken into a couple categories where you register the production and then you get further permitting for each stage of the production. And the permitting is dependent on the activities of the filming. I mean, some of these film sets have pyrotechnics, some are much more simple. So there are other intersections and bylaws and regulations for the town that will certainly intersect with the filming opportunities here. And so we've built out a document to ensure that folks are clearly communicating what they are going to get up to so that the town can contemplate how to go about handling those permits and what the sort of logistics around them are. Next slide, please. So implementing the vision. These actions are tailored to community feedback and strategic goals. So the implementation takes our recommendations and it takes the research that we've done and it funnels it through this sort of idea that the actions we're going to recommend within our recommendations, they are tailored directly to the feedback that we heard, and they're also in alignment with the economic development plan, as well as long-term strategies for sustainable growth. So we ensured that through implementation, we're understanding, being mindful of the human resources necessary, the cost necessary for this stuff, and trying to break things up over the course of 5 years in a realistic manner that will allow for long-term success. Next slide, please. So next steps, we have benefits of the marketing and readiness plan. So in hoping to get folks behind this plan and the reason why we think it's important and why people would want to get behind this plan is because it does provide a very practical roadmap. It's a series of marketing strategies that will help guide Perth and are in alignment with, the voice of Perth as a community, as a business community, as well as the official master plans that are a part of the community. And it also ensures Perth is well prepared for beginning marketing activities or implementation strategies. And that is one component of this plan that we are very excited about. It's always good to have a great idea and to market something in a wise way and make it look good and try to sell something. But what's very important here is to make sure that you're not selling something that isn't authentic. And the readiness component will ensure that whatever is being promoted is prepared for. And so how do we implement? We are eager to have council's endorsement on this, and we are very eager to have the community's involvement in rolling out the plan and their endorsement as well. So thank you. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It's quite comprehensive and informative. Are there any questions that any members of the committee have? Councillor Byrd.
Yes, thank you. Yes, for your presentation and for the effort that's been put in here. Lots to take in. And of course, there's the document, which is more detailed, and I appreciate that. I do have a question, though, in relation to perhaps it comes into attracting businesses, but in the past, there has been discussion at council about how, if you like, we're not a one-trick pony with tourism. And one of the things that was discussed at that point was the new healthcare models that are coming in and perhaps becoming a health hub. Would that fit in under attracting businesses, or is it something specific we should address, given that it's arguably another tier of government that governs that?
I would say both. I mean, obviously, that was something that sort of screamed off the papers for us of the opportunity for economic development in the realm of health, seeing as the population is the age it is and where things are heading. And that I think that is a amazing opportunity there. Could also be an interesting way to retain students here that are coming to town from Algonquin College, depending on what programs are offered or could be offered in the future. Those programs could be catered to the expertise needed for some of these health initiatives that could move in.
Thank you.
Mayor Brown.
Yes, thank you. Great report. There's so many things to pursue. One of the things that's concerned me for a while is that, say you go to a performance or whatever, and you look at the scan over the audience, and most of the hair of the people there is gray, but when those people like myself pass on to their reward, we do need younger people to replace them. So what would you say is the primary methodology that you would use to attract young people?
Well, that's a tough question. I think all of the components of this plan and looking at those target segments and coming back to those target segments is taking that into deep consideration. Each of those segments will contain youth, whether, with families, these are children. If these are young, digital nomads, as we call them, or remote workers, you're looking at a younger generation in the workforce that ideally will be having children here. Immigrant families coming to town, if it's an opportunity for them to set up here. I think that there are a lot of opportunities there to help ensure that there is a youthful generation coming up here. And we also felt it was important to, over time, align with the college to try to keep folks here. Don't just have folks come and leave when they're done.
And the CAO and I visited Eaton Manufacturing, and one of the managers said, They have another location. I don't remember where, when he was told he was being transferred to Perth, he thought, yeah, oh yeah, okay, small town. But the thing that attracted him the most was that it was a safe community
Mhm.
where he could raise his kids.
Yeah, and I think more and more folks are looking for that. And ideally, this plan can provide a bit of a roadmap to steal some of those folks that might go to maybe larger metropolitan centers and set up shop here.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you. I will give the floor now to Kara, who is online and would like to speak.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Kara?
Thank you. I don't know. Can you hear me?
We
Can I do that?
cannot hear you
We can't see you.
and we can't see you.
Might be a settings thing because I am. Okay. Can you hear me now?
See the joys of remote working.
Okay. Kara, we will let another counselor ask a question and hopefully we'll get back to you in a minute or two when the technical issue will be resolved. Counselor McRae, I believe you may have had a question.
Thank you, Chair. In your plan, it seems to me like that you talk about the readiness and then the marketing. And in the section on readiness, I guess I'm asking, because when you talked about filming, you really dove into that and you've done a lot of prescriptive work in developing that. When we look at readiness, are we also going to look at some of these different things that you identified under SWOT? For example, daycare. Would that be another area of readiness that
Oh,
this group
absolutely.
would definitely be looking at?
Yeah.
And where, in terms of a priority, in terms of readiness, or have we even got to that point where when we look at the readiness, the list of readiness items, have we started to prioritize that?
Yes, I think in terms of priority, I think that is naturally a big priority if it's a big issue and it's something we heard about many times. And I think that there's just going to have to be a component of it that is acted on and to the best of its ability, because readiness to be fully ready for something is it possible with childcare? Is the creation of the type of childcare that's needed here able to happen before the audience comes? I keep thinking to myself, with plans like this, you have an interesting chicken and an egg situation where you want to set something up for somebody, but is the demand necessarily there? It does seem within the community that the demand is there. But we do make reference in the plan to some of the nuances that might have to happen in terms of who you're specifically targeting. Like when it comes to families, it might be people who have school-aged children. That might be a bit more of a draw, because then they don't have babies that necessarily are going to soon need daycare. And if there are younger families that are already at a certain age, it could be an easier transition. So that was definitely a component of the readiness. And we tried to make it as sort of wide ranging as possible within the recommendations to address, hey, and if this can't happen, here's an alternate solution, or here's a means of targeting a certain demographic.
Thank you.
At this point, I'll go back to Kara. Kara, the floor is yours if you can get through to us.
Okay, can you hear me?
Muffled.
What's this?
That's a little bit.
If you could speak up a bit louder, please.
Okay, I will try. I'm never too quiet usually, so this is, can you hear me?
Not very well.
Not very well, but it might be the best we're gonna get. So
Okay.
go for it.
I think one of the things that we really make important is that any marketing activity that we are using to attract new residents is very authentic. So giving folks a really good understanding of what it's like to move into the community. That it is a smaller town, slower pace, that you have connectivity, but not setting up folks for an expectation that they'll be moving to an urban center, and being very authentic when you're engagement with those folks and what they can expect within their communities, so that you know that you're attracting the right type of people. And I think that video storytelling.
Excuse me, Kara, I don't mean to interrupt, but we really cannot understand you.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Pat and let him answer.
If I could, maybe I could just.
If you could pick up Pat,
Well,
just
a little
summarize.
bit, yeah. We
Yeah,
hear
okay.
each other enough in a work setting that I can.
Well, exactly.
hear
Sorry
the
about that,
noise.
Kara.
I think what Kira is saying is just ensuring that what we're promoting is authentic to newcomers and understanding that there are characteristics of Perth being a smaller a town in relation to a big metropolitan center, and that there are there is offered here a slower pace of living, and it's important in to ensure that we're not suggesting you sell something that isn't just completely authentic in the marketing side of things. Kira, sorry if I'm butchering that.
Thank you. Any further questions from the committee? Councillor Bold.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that it's a very good presentation. What I got out of it is the fact that there's a number of different links that make up your proposal to make us a go-to destination for investment for people and from all walks of life. I think the important thing to remember, and when you were talking about, upgrading our infrastructure under the Enhance and Prepare initiatives, as you alluded to, that can be very expensive, and whether we can prepare for an explosive growth in a short time is probably not likely because of the costs of developing our infrastructure. We're constantly going forward, and in many discussions that we're going to have going forward with respect to infrastructure improvement and the cost of that, I think that's one of the key links. And with the given attractiveness to Perth, all of a sudden, after decades of no growth, we are now saddled with many builders that want to build for this explosive growth. So it's important that we try to capture what you're proposing in the best way so that we're ready. We're going to be ready housing wise, but are we going to be ready enough for industry and growth in many other sectors to take up that nuance of new housing in the area? So I guess the message I'm trying to say is I like your plan, but it's only as strong as the weakest link in it.
Yeah.
I have one question, since there's no other questions from the committee. I've read your commercial film policy. Could you talk to us a little bit more about how we specifically are going to target and market to filmmakers, directors, and production companies to encourage them here to come here to film in Perth?
Other communities in the province offer incentives. They waive the fees of permitting. They'll provide tax incentives. So you can incentivize in that fashion. There are a number within the plan. There is mention of some of the organizations in Ottawa, because in speaking with folks from the film industry in both Toronto and Ottawa, folks in Toronto in production generally said Perth is, unless there was an absolutely desired location there that we couldn't find anywhere else,
Right.
it's a little far for bringing cast and crew. So the production houses out of Ottawa will be an important, will be important to sort of market to. And they have a variety of different websites where people can literally house, photographs of the locations that can be used, sort of like really connecting like visual and like what the town has to offer in terms of the amenities and catering and certain things. So there will be some opportunities for the town to promote itself on those stages. And those get circulated amongst all the folks that are doing all the set decisions and deciding where to sort of set up and film. So there are lots of opportunities for Perth to promote itself, like without major investment there at all. Literally just getting some good photos and understanding of where you want people to film and what the guidelines are, and attaching that policy. And
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
There being no further questions, thank you very much for your presentation.
thank you so much, everybody. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a recommendation from one of the members to receive this presentation for information? Deputy Mayor, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. On to our second delegation. It's a pleasure to welcome Stephanie Drummond back to Chambers once more. Please come forward, Stephanie. You're going to be speaking on pending charges to natural health products, impact on community hospitals. We look forward to your presentation. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Your Worship, Mayor and Council. I am Stephanie Drummond, and I thank you for having me here this evening to speak on what I consider a very important issue, not only to our community, but to Canada as a whole. However, with only 10 minutes, I'll have to stick to the short story. In last year's budget implementation bill, Bill C-47, the Canadian government snuck a change of definition of natural health products to be included as therapeutics under the same category as pharmaceuticals, which puts a great risk on the affordability and availability of these natural health products for the average consumer, which accounts for about 80% of Canadians. This section of Bill C-47 gives power to Health Canada to put unnecessary fees and regulations on natural health products that already have the highest safety standards and net regulations in the world. Millions of people have come to rely on these products to enhance the quality of their health and well-being, myself included. I have a condition called trigeminal neuralgia. It's a severe facial nerve pain. And long story short, I have many medicinal allergies, which includes the one specifically prescribed for this condition. And I now rely on a product called St. John's wort for whenever I have a flare-up. I do not want to experience not having access to this. And I'm not the only one who has unique needs of natural health products. At our town hall meeting, we heard many stories from locals of their needs of these products as well. And a recording of this meeting was sent to by the deputy clerk to each of the members of the committee. On April 18th of this year, a friend and I hosted a town hall meeting at the Lions Hall to help spread awareness of what is coming for natural health products. We had a great panel of speakers, including a naturopathic doctor, a local gym owner, MP Scott Reid, and MP Blaine Calkins of Red Deer Lacombe, Alberta, who has tabled a private member's bill, Bill C-368, to repeal the sections 500 to 504 of Bill C-47. Bill C-368 currently enjoys the full support of the Bloc, the NDP, and the Conservative caucuses, which is why I am here today, to seek the support of my hometown government. And even though this is a federal issue, this municipal government represents a large block of voters. I am asking that council adopt a resolution in support of Bill C-368 and share that resolution with our local MP, Scott Reid, but more importantly, with the National Minister of Health and the Prime Minister, and further, that you share this resolution with Lanark County and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, seeking their adoption of similar resolutions from the 444 municipalities in Ontario. Life has already gotten too expensive for many of us. Let's not make good health unaffordable, because being unable to support and maintain our own health would be catastrophic to our already overwhelmed hospital. And if 32 million Canadians lose access to natural health products, what is that going to do to our healthcare systems? What would that cost us if now 45 cents of every Ontario tax dollar goes to healthcare? Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions of Stephanie? Councillor Bolt.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, for your presentation, and I couldn't agree with a lot of the comments you made anymore, because I, as well, have numerous issues that I rely on natural health products to help me get through every day. My question is, there are some products. I mean, if you look at everything on social media and on Facebook and everything else, every day I see at least 10 new ads how I can cure my type 2 diabetes in 3 days by taking this product or that product and so on. And I know it's a bunch of bunk. So my question is, is there a particular list of specific products that you refer to that can be encapsulated into this request, or is it just an overall?
It's an overall natural health products as a whole.
Because you say that many of them are tried and true, and that's
Yes.
great. I just wouldn't want to see products that haven't been, proven,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with
be
you.
given any kind of support.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mayor Brown?
So, if I understand correctly, and like Councillor Bolt, I do use natural products and they do help. If the legislation passes, would a great many of the natural products that are currently on the shelves just be gone?
I don't think they would completely disappear. I think many small business like manufacturers, mid-sized manufacturers would be forced to close because of the high fees and regulations that they would have to come up to. I feel like we would have less choice and the cost of what is there will be astronomical.
Councillor McCray.
Through you, Chair. Firstly, I applaud you for taking on such a gallant effort, Stephanie. And there is an entire health movement to utilize natural health products rather than those offered through big pharma. My question is, how many other municipalities in Ontario have already come forward with resolutions? You say there's 444.
None to my knowledge.
Okay, so you're just starting this from the bottom up. Okay, I just wanted to just suggest an idea. There's 49 counties and maybe if you went directly to counties, it might be a little less onerous. You already have the support of Scott Reid and the full support of the NDP and Conservative Caucus. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that is that the current government could block this from getting to third reading. So the more support, the better. And the current government also controls the Senate. So we want to show the current government that Canadians support this. So the more, the better. So
thank you.
Councillor Byrd.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you for your presentation and the points that you've made. No expert myself, and I don't take any of these products myself, but I know a number of people that do seem to benefit from them. I am wondering if it is reasonable for us to do this, and I would support it. My concern is that everywhere we look, there's tends to be a movement towards reducing people's choices in certain areas. And I fundamentally think that's what makes us a free society, is that we have choices. I did some little research before I came here. I couldn't find any lists anywhere on the great interweb of fatalities caused by natural health products or ODing. I found very little that was negative beyond, as Councillor Bolter reminded, that almost the quack medicine off the back of a wagon type approach to life, but people should be alert to that anyway. And I think we should start somewhere, and I personally would support this.
thank you, Councillor Byrd.
Any other questions? Stephanie, thank you very much for your presentation. Pleasure to see you again. What is the will of this committee?
I have a motion.
Mayor Brown.
So as recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth, 1, receive for information the delegation from Stephanie Drummond regarding pending changes to national health products and the impact on community hospitals, and further, 2, request that the House of Commons pass Bill 368 through second and third readings so it may be presented to the Senate for ratification, and that this resolution may be circulated to MP Scott Reid, the Honorable Mark Holland, Canada's Minister of Health, the Right Honorable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister, Lanark County Council, and other municipalities via the Association of Municipalities of Ontario.
All those in favor?
No, I want to comment.
Okay, please go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Totally support the idea and the incentive. I won't support the motion this time because I don't have enough information to make an informed decision. It's the first I've heard of it, really. And this is a big issue, I assume, for a lot of Canadians and the federal government and other governments, but I don't have the information I need to make an informed decision.
Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion? Those against? 1 against, 6-4. Passed.
Congratulations.
Good for you.
Moving on to correspondence 7.1 as listed. Councillor Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moved by myself as recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth receive for information the following correspondence. 1, letter of gratitude from the Village of Westport dated March 28th, 2024. 2, Emergency Management Ontario Compliance Results 2023 dated April 15th, 2024. And 3, County of Lanark regarding the Harvest Festival call for municipal highlight dated May the 1st, 2024.
Is there any discussion? Counselor Smith.
I would like to ask why we received this letter of gratitude from the Village of Westport. What was it that was done?
I'll pass it along to our CAO.
So if council remember earlier or late last year, I informed council that our treasury staff was helping the Village of Westport while they were absent any finance staff. So both Brian and Shannon and I think Nicole all took turns providing different levels of support to Westport, helping them get their books in order at the end of the year after the sudden departure of their treasurer. And then Brian also helped them set up their budget for this year.
Thank you.
Mayor Brown.
Yeah, speaking to the second and third ones, Emergency Management Ontario, so this is the Emergency Management Week, and the CCAP has designated the money from their budget to buy 10 72-hour kits to be given away to people. People can enter online and, give their email address and name and phone number and so on. So you stand a chance of winning one of these. They're valued at about $150. And the other one is the Harvest Festival. This has over the years been held at the Beckwith Park, and it's been generally the northern municipalities that have sort of sponsored it. So I believe they're asking if any other municipality wants to sponsor it this year, but I just can't see us doing it because of the amount of work involved.
Any other comments? Counselor Byrd?
Yes, I'll thank you, Chair. I'll try and be brief. The letter of gratitude, a fun fact on this, should prompt us to be aware of the quality of the staff and team that we've got together. Not only did they prepare our own unnecessary documentation, get the audit done earlier than a lot of municipalities, but they're also out there helping other municipalities. I think it speaks volumes to the quality of the team we've got in place, and I would like to see that acknowledged formally.
Thank you, Counselor Byrd. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? Unanimous, passed. Thank you. Next, 7.2 request action. Counselor McCray.
Whereas the Committee of the Whole received report 2024 Committee of the Whole 2-11 process for selling the Perth Moore Corridor lands at the meeting held on January the 16th, 2024. Whereas the most prudent action for council to take regarding the Perth Moore Corridor lands would be to sell it in parts to adjacent property owners. None therefore, as recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth direct staff to begin the process required to sell the property known as the Perth Moore Corridor in parts to the adjacent property owners in accordance with bylaw number 4549 as amended.
Thank you, Counselor McCray. As a reminder, Mayor Brown will not be participating in the discussion or the vote on this particular motion. Is there anybody, would you like to speak to the motion? Go ahead, Counselor McCray.
Our council and town remain committed to active transportation as evident by our ongoing active transportation master plan. Our 2024 council has committed in our budget $135K towards sidewalks along Tree Lawn. Supporting active transportation in Perth includes numerous variables: safety, accessibility, security and privacy for neighbors, cost, usage, and environmental implications, and the list goes on. Unfortunately, not all well-intentions come to fruition, and every location doesn't necessarily work. The 639K in development charges for Perthmore can be used for other roads. This money has been earmarked and committed to create a third entrance to the subdivision off Highway 7. It will follow the original path at the arterial road, at least at the start, as part of Phase 6 and 7 for Perthmore, which continues to be an ongoing issue and is before the Ontario Land Tribunal. This is public knowledge. There is no strand funds available to create a pathway. Council firmly made a decision that the utility easement is unsuitable for a pathway. We have a total of 6 property owners along blocks 34, 33, and 23 prepared to purchase this utility easement, all in the proximity of each other. There are 2 that are not. This is why I'm bringing this motion forward to council. And I would just like to remind those members of council who sat on the previous council, they were advised by our legal counsel to sell this property.
Thank you, Councillor McCray. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Byrd.
Thank you through the chair. It's a two-parter, if I may.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. My first thought on this was council made a decision and had reviewed a number of options. Yes, the pathway option was completely out. We settled this by designating it as an easement and that it would be there for our maintenance and available to the work that needs to be done, should it be to the stormwater management or any of the other utilities. That was the decision. The process had taken an inordinate amount of time and was given a great deal of consideration. And I, perhaps naively, thought that we had made a decision and would stand by it. And we are potentially opening this up again. And this is all part of my first part, if I may. You know, it's a thin line between being prepared to move and adapt as the situation changes and being indecisive and flip-flopping on issues. It's a thin line. Having said that, if it is the will of council to revisit this, and this is not a decision to do it, it's a decision to instruct staff to give them something else to do in relation to this. And it's the will that we be looking into that. I would urge that we get significant legal advice for a long-term position that is enforceable. And if it's not, I will not vote for it. Whereby, and remember, you're giving people land, you're letting them buy it, and it becomes their property, that it is very limited in what it can be used for, so that utilities can be accessed and that we can get in there if there are stormwater management issues. Because that at the moment is what we can do, because it's an easement. If it becomes someone else's private property, I don't want, and it may not necessarily be the people living there now, but I don't want other councils down the road to have issues because people say it's my property, you can't access it. And that's where I am on that.
Thank you, Councillor Byrd. Any other comments? Councillor Smith?
I think it's about 6 years now that we've been talking about this back and forth and what to do with it. I am of the belief that if there is any way possible to keep that pathway open, that's what we should be doing. We received a petition, I'm not sure the date, probably in the previous council, with 132 names on it, all in favor of using that as a pathway. Somehow along the way, 5 people have pushed their way into our minds, I guess, in trying to change it. But I can't vote for this. There are too many people out there who want this open. And I think we should make every effort to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I would remind members of this committee that while it's a fine line, the motion is about selling land or keeping it as a municipal property. While what you just spoken about, Councillor Smith, is certainly related, we want to keep the discussion specific to the motion. And I would request any further comments stick to that specific motion. With that, Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that's exactly what I was going to say. I think we're talking about chickens and turkeys here because the fact of the matter is that this motion is simply to, do we as a council agree to sell small parcels of land to the adjacent and abutting landowners? The fact of the matter is council did approve the closing of the corridor some time ago, and that was then and it's gone. We're not asking to reopen the discussion on the corridor in any way, shape, or form. With respect to the question that Councillor Byrd had regarding the ability to get onto the property to maintain the hydro infrastructure under the ground, I would wondering if our CAO or if anybody else knows that there would be any kind of a legal clause in there to allow for that, even if the land is sold, as it is often done in many other places.
Through the chair, yes, there would be an easement registered across that, just as there is now for all the utility companies to be able to access that. Those easements are registered across our property now, and that easement, as per our lawyers, would transfer to the new owners.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? At this point, I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. That's 4 in favor. Those against? 2 against. The motion passes. Moving along to staff reports, 8.1. As listed, I would call upon Councillor Byrd for your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moved by myself, as recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth received the non-audited financial statements for the Corporation of the Town of Perth to March 31st, 2024, as presented in Report 2024-CAL-7.1.
Does anybody have any questions of Brian or any comments with regards to this motion? We'll wait for Mayor Brown to have a seat. Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion? That's unanimous. Mayor Brown, are you aware of what we're voting on now?
Financial
It
statement.
is 8.1.
Yes. Good.
Councillor Byrd has just read that motion. Are you in favor?
Mhm.
Yes. Okay, that's unanimous, passed. Moving along to 8.2, as listed. Deputy Mayor.
As recommended by Committee of the Whole, be it resolved, the Council Town of Perth recommend the province that the composition of the Leonard County OPP Detachment Board be reduced from a 20-member board to a 12-member board that would be comprised of 1 municipal representative from each of the 8 municipalities served by the board, 2 community representatives, and 2 provincial representatives that presented Cal Report 7.2.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councillor Byrd.
Thank you to the chair. It's not a question, Mr. Chair. It's just a comment that I'm delighted that after 6 years, as of the 25th of April, I'm no longer employed by the OPP, and I can sit in on these things and comment on them.
Congratulations. We look forward to your input. Councillor McCray.
Through your chair, I understand that there's 8 representatives from the various municipalities. And there's 2 provincial appointees and there's 2 community reps. Where did the community, how do they determine who the community reps are? Is that appointed through the 8 municipal representatives, or where does that?
Deputy Mayor, would you have a comment there?
So welcome to the world of the new Police Service Act in the province of Ontario.
I have questions.
So if you can find out the answer, let me know, because
Okay.
the reason why we two years ago, maybe 3 years ago, the provincial government told us there's a new Community Policing Service Act was going to be put in place, and we had 8 months to build a new board. And again, that was 2 or 3 years ago, the deadline, which never happened from the province. So Leonard County, all municipal boards in Leonard County went ahead by themselves, devised a new plan on how to build a new board, try and get the training you have to be on the new board, on and on and on. We've met quite a few times. What we call ourselves now is the transitional board, because all of the regular police service boards in the county have now been disbanded. So we actually don't have a police service board in the county of Leonard. So we have no power, no authorities. And we decided as a board, and Perth is the last one to sign on to this, is that we felt a 20-member board would be too cumbersome to get anything done. Because, you know, if you go to a meeting with 20 board members, that's a lot of people. So we decided we'd go down to 12. We're asking the provincial government to tell us who are the 2 provincial people and how do we pick the 2 community reps? And we haven't heard. But I can tell you that all the members must complete a bunch of online education, which I haven't started yet, which I will. And all the members now have to actually complete a criminal record check in order to sit on the board, which I just finished doing, which was a really fun exercise to do, because you have to do this with the new police service board things in place. But anyway, I don't know the answer. And even though we keep asking the government for answers, you might get the answer before we do. So we ask them just about every week, can you tell us what the next step is? And we can't find out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Byrd?
Yes, if I may, through the chair to the deputy mayor. It's interesting that you went with the 8, not you personally, but they decided to go with the 18 instead of 20. In relation to the 2 community representatives, if you, and I'm not saying you should, disregard Perth and Carlton Place as towns, the OPP divides the Lanark County into 4 zones. And if you had 4 reps, you could argue that they could come from one from each of those, just to help you, given that you're going to have thousands of people potentially and 2 positions.
So
Go ahead.
just so that you know, my personal feelings is when I made a motion at the boards basically to leave the 20-member board, I wasn't in favor really of going down to a 12-member board, because what happens, for example, is if I get sick and I can't go to the board meetings for 3 or 4 months, you're basically don't have any representation. You might get the minutes, but that's all you'll get. There is language now in there that we can appoint someone else to go to the meetings after a certain point in time. I think it's 3 months. The other suggestion I made to the other board members was, if this passes among all the municipalities, which it has everywhere else but here, when these 4 people are picked, if there's a community representative from Carlton, no, how did I figure this out? If the community representative is from Carlton Place by the government, they don't get the provincial rep also. We try and spread these out as much as we can. No one knows what we're really doing. So we're just trying to get going to get a police service board for the county. So.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Any further questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. That's passed unanimous. Moving along to 8.3, I will call upon Grant to please give us a presentation on the Cockburn Street reconstruction final design.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've done a short presentation of four slides just to go over the status of Cockburn and how we came about the final design. So as you recall, Cockburn Street was on the list for asset management to be reconstructed this year. It is a total reconstruction of water, sewer, roads, and storm sewer system. Cockburn Street is a collector road that links Rogers Road to Drummond and Gore Street. It is a relatively quiet street with only residential on one side and the fairgrounds on the other. However, its overall impact to the municipality is very key. Most of the wastewater on the east ward of Perth from the river all the way to the industrial park goes through Cockburn Street down to the Cockburn Street pump station. And in that same tone, all the infrastructure is very, very deep and in a rock trench. So when we're looking at our considerations for Cockburn Street, we wanted to update its overall design into an urban cross section. If you were to look at Cockburn Street right now, I indicated with a Google sketch that it's what's called a rural cross section. So it's basically paved like a rural road, but there is no storm sewer, there is no curbing. It doesn't clearly delineate what the street looks like. There also, when we were looking at Cockburn, we had some considerations for the fairgrounds. There's a number of stormwater challenges with the site and limited services there that are just for the seasonal use for a few days. So we want to incorporate that. We also had two open houses. One is our kickoff to get insight from the neighborhood. And then also when we had the final draft of the design, we had a subsequent open house, which was last Thursday. The main concerns of the neighborhood was drainage. A lot of the water generally went from the fairground side of the street over and laid in the front yards. Also parking, predominantly peak loading during the fair event, or when there's a community event, the people park on people's lawns and they park on the sidewalk. So it's not very well delineated. And the community also wanted to ensure that their sidewalks were maintained. So you'll see in the next slide how those were accomplished. This is the final design in a more civilian portrayal, so you can understand a little easier than the engineering drawings we have. Behind Deputy Mayor, I posted that same drawing on the bulletin board if you want to look at it long term. The top section is the aerial view, and I've indicated two trouble areas, if you want to call it that. At the Arthur Street end, there's a small area that bulbs out. I hate to say bulb out in this context, but there is a large outcrop of rocks on that corner, and we're not going to be tackling that as part of this project. So we've bent the sidewalk around that at that intersection. At the other end, at the if you want to call it the cattle barn area of the fairgrounds, there is a very low depressed area. So we've also incorporated that. That was a request from the fair board to incorporate a challenge with the drainage in that area of the fairgrounds. So as a general cross section, there'll be two travel lanes that are 3.5 meters wide, which is the same or slightly wider than the current cross section. And then on the lay-by area abutting the fairgrounds, there is a 3-meter parking spot. There is going to be a curb that delineates down the center or on the side next to the parking spots, which will clearly delineate parking from the driving portion of the road. So it is our standard cross section at 8.5 meters. To the two travel lanes and the single parking. The community was recognized the effort that we had incorporating their concerns, and we've also been successful at securing a block captain for this project, which is something that we were unable to do on Mary Street, but both Tom Street and Cockburn, we have secured block captains, so I'm very excited about that. Good. I believe that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Grant. Questions of Grant? Councillor McCray.
Can we go back to the picture, if that would be okay? So Grant, when I was reading the information on this, it talks about sidewalks. Now, we already have a sidewalk. Are we on the side of the fairground? We're going to leave that sidewalk there. And are we going to build a new sidewalk on the other side?
Through chair, there is currently sidewalk that is there, and it's about 25 years old.
I wouldn't
Unfortunately,
even know.
how?
I was there the other day and you never know there was hardly a sidewalk there.
So
Are we talking the far side?
no, the existing sidewalk is on the fairgrounds side.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the other side.
I'm trying to get there.
Yeah.
So the one on the fairground side, unfortunately, will be sacrificed because the
Okay.
depth of the excavation is going to be so wide to get down to the 4 and 5 meters deep. The excavation will be very wide, so that sidewalk will be an impairment to production. So it will be removed. It will be replaced with a new 1.8 meter sidewalk, which is more accessible at 6 feet wide.
Mhm.
There will not be any sidewalk on the other side.
Mayor Brown.
So if memory serves, and there's a chain link fence all around the fairgrounds.
That's correct.
So does that have to be temporarily demolished in order to do the works?
No, it will not be. Won't be affected.
Councillor Bold.
Thank you, Chair. So Grant, I just want a clarification, and I know you used that bulb out word, but when I'm looking at the two circles, left and right, is the width of the road going to be greatly impaired or not at all?
Through the chair, the road width currently is the same or slightly wider with the new design.
Okay.
But instead of having full width at the entrances, we've narrowed that down because of the rock on one end and drainage on the other.
Okay, but so the overall result is it's better, it's not worse.
It's better. That's
Thank you.
correct. Yeah. Michael, if you could just go back to the previous Google shot, you can see that's the road width and we're going the same or slightly wider.
Any other questions of Grant? Councillor McCray.
Okay, so presently there are no storm sewers, and so they're all going to have to be implemented. And I guess I'm just in terms of does the Fair Board, do they contribute to this type of a thing? Like when it comes to, like there's gates along that area. We're going to be improving their drainage. I'm just wondering.
The storm sewer will be installed. There currently is no storm sewer, so a number of those houses, their sub pumps go into the sanitary. So this is a combined sewer. So we are providing storm sewer to every individual house. We're also installing catch basins on the street. So instead of the water ponding in yards as it comes down, that will go into a separated storm sewer that goes to Rogers Road. I think my response would, we have an obligation as a municipality to convey storm water that comes into our corridor. So the any drainage being a personal residential unit or commercial, as that gets into our municipal corridor, we have an obligation to convey it to an outfall.
Okay.
So these trouble areas that have been graded on site by the fairgrounds now is in our responsibility to get rid of.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Do the Fair Board have to do any plumbing, new hookups and stuff, Grant, or is it all coming off the other street?
Through the chair, we will be joining on to their existing network. However, I will tell council that my intent is to upsize some of these services with no preconception of future needs, but on a project like this where you're looking at 50 to 80 years in the future, and with the depth of 4 to 5 meters deep, I don't want people going back there in the future. So we will be bringing larger size pipe to the property line and connecting to the existing for the Fair Board at no cost and no change in service level.
Any further questions before we have a motion? Councillor Smith.
As recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of Town of Perth receive for information the Cockburn Street reconstruction final design as presented in report 2024-CAL-7.3.
Thank you. All those in favor? It's unanimous, passed. At this point, Grant, you might as well stay where you are, and Councillor Smith, your next motion, please.
As recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth pass bylaw number 51XX, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign an agreement with Campbell's Trucking Limited in the amount of $285,292.90 plus HST for the reconstruction of approximately 266 meters of Cockburn Street from Arthur Street to Rogers Road in 2024 as presented in report 2024-CAL-7.4.
Are there any questions or comments for Grant, Deputy Mayor?
Interesting side note, at the Good Roads Conference, Premier Ford did a bit of a presentation and he made quite a presentation of all of the roads the provincial government has uploaded over the past year or will be uploaded, which turns out to be really provincial highways at one time. And he was asked by the moderator, what about the infrastructure of small town Ontario that's got to pay $2.2 million for roads? He didn't really have an answer when this guy asked for assistance.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Grant? Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Bird?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I be brief again. It's really in relation to the figure, the amount plus HST. And it's a question of Director Burns, really, for a clarification. Fun fact that I just learned today after being here 6 years is that, can you explain how it's coming in under budget, but how you set that budgeted amount in relation to HST?
Yes, through the chair, we set a provision of 1.76% on top of the expected capital cost for the HST, which is equal to the 13% less the rebate we get back.
Thank you.
Grant, please go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just as an item, I do want to recognize Noah Greer, our new manager of engineering and development support. Noah worked very hard with our engineering team to get this out the door. Not having an engineering tech last year put this very low in our library. He worked very diligently to get this out. We are hearing in the industry there's a lot of tenders out and we just were ahead of the curve. So I think that talks to the favorable pricing that we got. So I do want to recognize my staff on that.
And please pass along our sincere thanks for his excellent work. With that, all those in favor? Pass unanimously. 8.5. As listed, Councillor Smith, again, we're hearing your voice a bit. That's great.
As recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth pass bylaw number 51XX, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to complete an agreement with Iron Trade Works, Inc. for the supply and installation of a raw water turbine pump for the Perth Water Treatment Plant in the amount of $121,954.92 plus HST as presented in report 2024-CAL-7.5.
Thank you, Councillor. Questions, comments? Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Grant, I noticed that he was the only bidder. Always makes me nervous when there's only one bidder because I wonder whether we're getting a good price or not. I also noticed that where it asks for a bid bond, yes or no, he says no. Any concerns here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, through our overall procurement process, we advertise these projects on Bidingo, which is a national/international bidding site. So it's open and transparent to all those agencies. We also had a mandatory site meeting. There was three attendees of other agencies. They chose not to bid. Iron Trade Works is a local supplier, a local millwright company that has the capacity and does a lot of work for us at the water plant. So though it is only the one bid, I think it talks about the availability of this infrastructure. And I have confidence that this work will be completed with professionalism that we've already enjoyed for the last few years.
If I could just ask a supplementary question.
Please go ahead.
Mr. Chair. That's great, Grant, and I trust your integrity in that and so on. Could I just ask why the other three companies didn't bid?
Through you, Chair, we don't get that information. I believe a mandatory site meeting, the intent of that is to get context, local context, and look at the situation rather than engineering drawings. And we tend to do that when it's complicated like this. This pump was installed in 1964, so it's a very legacy Cold War generation of mechanical device. So there's a lot of intricacies to getting it back in place. and also keeping the plant active at the same time. So that all rolls into what we can perceive as an elevated price, but there's a lot of technical nature, both electrical, mechanical, and SCADA software that has to go update during this process.
Thank you.
Mayor Brown.
Yes, I noticed from the report that this is one of 3 pumps that take water from the Tay. Are the other pumps about the same age, or can we expect to replace one of the others in a couple of years or whatever?
Through the chair, there are 3 raw water pumps that supply water from the river up into the upper levels of the water plant. There are also 3 large turbine pumps on the service side that pumps it into the water mains on the street. All of those are the same age. This is the first of them to be replaced. So this will be a multi-year plan.
Councillor Byrd.
Thank you. I think I may have jumped ahead of Councillor McRae there.
It was sort of a tie in my eyes, but
Okay. I'll defer to her.
okay, go ahead, Councillor McRae.
Yes, the 2024 budget includes 651,000 for various water treatment upgrades. With this expense, will we have sufficient dollars to complete the other upgrades required to be done?
Through the chair, yeah. That number is made up of a number of items on the asset management list, and this is one of those components, so it'll work.
Okay.
Now, Councillor Byrd.
Thank you, through the chair. Just for my own clarification here, are we replacing absolutely like for like 1960s technology, and that's been part of the reason? And if so, that's going to be limited in the future. Are we going to have to look at some other form, or is it just such standard technology that it'll be the same thing?
Through the chair, my response would be 2-part. I could only hope that we enjoyed the durability of those 1960s pieces of equipment. I worked on them a number of times and they're extremely durable. We are not seeing that type of bulk and robustness from the new products. However, there's so many other benefits from them, like soft starts, delayed surging, that affect our energy consumption and wear and tear on the machines. So that's the benefit of going with newer infrastructure.
So it's a bit like refrigerators from 30 years ago as compared to the ones that are coming out now.
Through the chair, I concur with that comment. Yes.
Hearing no more questions, all those in favor of the motion? It's unanimous. The motion passes. With that, we're to 8.6, and I'll be calling upon Joanna to give us a presentation on a development projects update for 2024.
Okay, so I just want to start this by saying that building and planning has been working very hard at trying to do more communication and outreach with respect to various items, and there will be more coming forward as we go along. You'll actually be the second people I show this to. I apologize. I did present this at the BIA, and I have sent it to the Chamber of Commerce, and Brian Gass is out presenting it tonight along with the changes to the Building Code Act at the Home Builders Association meeting tonight. So, but I thought as I was preparing this, there are other places I'll send it to the school board and a few others just as we go along. I'm like, oh, we could do this or that. But I just wanted to go through really quickly. You guys have seen the majority of these. So nothing should really come as a big surprise, but I think when you look at it holistically, you can sort of start to understand the direction in which we're headed. Next slide, please. So looking at commercial and residential development permits, next slide, please. So this is to do with building department only. So I can go through these very briefly, but these are commercial building permits issued. There were internal renovations and site plan to Canadian Tire, LCBO, the court, independent grocer, Lanark Lifestyles for phase 2, extension to the medical clinic, and then downtown area 1827 Wine and Cheese, renovations to the Crystal Palace, Kelly's Flowers is moving back downtown. Multiple sign permits and some fire orders as well on various properties. So those are some of the things that have been issued or have been worked through. Next slide, please. Residential development permits issued. 15 Victoria Street, conversion of a funeral home to apartments. 131 Gore Street, we see it being built down here, 4-unit residential apartment. And permits for 12 renovations, repairs, decks, and pools, thus for this year. Next slide, please. Currently in planning for commercial developments, 85 Dufferin Street. This is the, if anyone knows the Graph House area, they're going to be putting up a 7-unit retail plaza. So we're in the final stages of issuing a site plan for that. This one in particular didn't come to council because it met all the requirements of the zoning bylaw. And so they could just go ahead and proceed with staff issue of site plan. So we are sort of in the final timeframes of getting that out and working through that. And next slide, please. 65 Dufferin, you all know and love the GM building site plan. And that's in the process of going up right now. They have a conditional building permit. And so we are finalizing some things and it's on the way up. Next slide, please. Above the Rest roofing, we have a site plan in the industrial park. And so we've received that application. Again, site plan, it meets the zoning requirements and everything's sort of tickety-boo. So we're just going through that process, but we should expect to see building there shortly.
Yeah, I'm going to wait to the end, I guess.
Okay. We issued a site plan for the Arcade Porter building. So that's another one staff has been working through, also in the industrial park. Next slide, please.
Could I ask a question in relation to commercial?
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Just above the Rest roofing there, do you know, and it's probably outside your bailiwick, whether they are kind of expanding the business and therefore need the space, or that because it'd be nice to see a local company doing well?
I believe that is the case, but I won't swear by it.
Okay.
But I believe that was because they were looking at a couple of different sites and then landed on that. So I believe that is true.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're just going to breeze through these. I think you guys are aware of them, but residential developments that are currently under, either they've had zoning approved and most of them are in the site plan stage. So, 55 to 57 Drummond Street is an 18-unit apartment building. You know where that one is, I believe. Next slide. 85 Wilson Street, a 16-unit apartment building. Next slide, please. 125 Wilson Street, 63 units, 20 of which are affordable, and some commercial space on the bottom. That is ongoing. They are waiting on approval of the official plan amendment from the county and some other outstanding issues prior to us moving through to site plan. Next slide, please. Harris Street, you guys, I think, are aware of this one. I'm showing the little lot and then the bigger lot. So this is 32 units through 2 16-unit apartment buildings on Harris Street. Next slide, please. 104 apartment units off of Harris Street as well. So as you can, I don't know if you can tell from that, but the 2 16 units are up in the shaded area. And then the other 4 apartments are 104 apartment units off of Harris Street. Next slide, please. Subdivisions, I'm sure you're aware. Next slide is Perthmore Phase 6. Total of 93 units and parkland. Next slide, please. Kaivan Perth Golf Course for 940 units, plus additional residential units on top of that and parkland. Next slide, please. So to summarize those developments, we have 13 projects ongoing in both building permit and planning stages for industrial, commercial, and institutional category. And for residential uses, we have 330 units if you exclude Kaivan. So an approximate population increase of about 603 people, using sort of a low measurement of 1.83 people per household. And when you do include 940 units for Kaiban, which is probably actually going to be a little higher, you're looking at between 1,720 to 2,300 people, I would say. So the estimated population growth based on the current applications that we already have approved or are going through approvals, we're looking at about 2,323 residents over the next 10 years. Next slide, please. So here's some open building permits issued in 2023 and 2024. 41 commercial, 37 residential, 6 government, 5 industrial. You can read the slide. I'm reading it out loud, but you guys can read that. And a lot of them are just, in various stages of closing up or just ironing out last details for the 2023 side of things. Next slide. For updates on developments, visit. You can press the button. There's a planning, Perth.planning. There should be. There you go. There's where you find out under current applications. That's where you can go and look at the developments that are ongoing. So that's my quick breeze through of the developments that are going on in the town right now. And we have, without having a lot of ability to discuss it, we are having continually booked development support team meetings every couple of weeks.
Joanna, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. It certainly gives this committee and all of our citizens an insight and a summary of the incredible amount of development and work that's taking place in our town, which also means that you and your team have been and continue to be incredibly busy. So we thank you for your outstanding work. And with that, questions? Councillor Bird.
Thank you, through the chair. 2 questions, if may, one for the director and one for council. Am I correct in thinking there's nothing north of 7 discussed here, development wise? Would that be fair?
Residentially speaking, we did have the GM dealership
Yes,
and the
I meant
7 unit,
residentially.
but residentially, that's correct. Currently, there are no active applications.
On the
north.
figures that you've provided, are they conservative on population growth? On the low side, you said, I think?
We are using, Brian Burns gave the number of 1.83. I would say that's probably conservative in my mind.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say that we are approaching or possibly exceeding population targets for the 8,000 step at least?
We will, if all of these go through, we will be slightly above the 8,185 that was set by the county.
Thank you. I therefore like, it doesn't have to be answered even, but I would pose a question rhetorically to council, I guess. Given this, given that we're not including residential development north of 7, at what point does a council say that we've thus far and no further, that we've reached our targets or possibly even exceeded them, with all the attendant impact on infrastructure, roads, our finite resources, the reduction of wetlands, and et cetera? It goes on and on and on. Do we or another council down the road say, oh, whatever, we'll go to 12 or 13? Or do we say we projected that we wanted to go to a certain level and we have a limited footprint and that we don't want the density? The people here don't want the density. They want to live in a rural, not urban environment. What do we do? And I'm not suggesting you answer now.
Just for the record, the county is doing a growth allocation study right now that's coming out very, very shortly. And so every 5 to 10 years, they do this growth allocation and try to determine what they feel the population might be and how it will be dispersed throughout the county. And so they're set to release those numbers very shortly, and we will be allocated additional numbers for the upcoming.
Thank you for that clarification, but whatever they decide, it won't increase the width of our streets, nor will it extend the life of our waste management plant. I'm just saying, at what point do we?
I thank you for the question, Councillor Byrd, and our CAO has a comment, then we'll move along to Mayor Brown.
Just, I guess just some context there too. I mean, council has limited say over what people can do with their properties if they meet the conditions of their zoning and everything else. So if I'm not sure that council can ever be at the point of saying, sorry, you can't get a building permit. If they've met certain conditions, they can get a building permit and go through the process.
Well, with fairness, because you raised that, and I've asked the questions, in fairness, because you raised that, we could do something about not changing the zones. Steve?
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Byrd, Mayor Brown.
Yeah, a couple of questions. EcoBuilt, would they propose putting the shovel in the ground this summer?
Put the shovel in the ground in the summer? I suspect that it would be later than that. The county has to process their official plan amendment, and then we have to go through some additional works and site plan control. So I would suspect a little bit later than that.
There's a building on Gore Street East. It's going to be an apartment building, I believe. It's near where TJ's is, and they've got much of the frame up. There was an issue with them not having enough parking. Could you comment on where that is?
I don't, if you had the address, I could comment.
Yeah, but there's no address on the building yet.
Which one? It used to be called PJ's Convenience Store, the corner of Halton and Gore, basically. It's all done.
Oh, yeah. Okay, the convenience, yeah. No, that was completed. I believe there was a minor variance for that, and building permits were issued last year.
Yeah.
So they probably completed the work. I'd have to check with the building department, but I imagine it's completed.
And just one last, no, it's not a question, but in regards to Councillor Byrd's comment about can we stop development in effect? But and it's in the next report where the provincial policy statement requires municipalities to demonstrate that they have enough land to provide for housing for the next 15 to 20 years. So that would be difficult to say no.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Any further questions or comments? Councillor McCray, you have a motion?
Yes. As recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth receive the information, the Development Project Update 2024 as presented in Report 2024 Committee of the Whole 7-6.
All those in favor? It's unanimous. It's passed. Joanna, 8.7, we're not letting you go yet. Update to provincial policy statement
you
and
would.
Bill, oh, we can't. Sorry, you've got one more. And Bill 185.
Okay, so I'll go through this. I drafted this up about 3 weeks ago, so I'm going to try to jog my memory on most of the stuff, but it's a lot of information. I'll try to be as brief as possible. But there's a lot here. So April 10th, the Government of Ontario has now released a new provincial planning statement 2024. On the same day, they released Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes under Bill 185. And despite the numerous changes it's made to various acts, they originally had the deadline at May 10th, and then they extended it 2 days to May 12th. So we can provide comments until that date. Next slide, please. So looking at the Provincial Policy Statement 2024. Next slide. So just for context for what planners are dealing with, since 2021, there have been at least 10 bills brought forward by the province to address matters of land use planning and development and municipal regulatory powers. So we're all still trying to catch up from the very first one that happened. And now looking at these bills, what's happened is that they kind of said, well, we think we went too far. We're going to pull some stuff back, but also now we're going to sort of, they've kind of done it back and forth. So it's things are getting a little complicated. We've had a big planners meeting about this to try to work through all these changes. Next slide, please. So planning for people in homes, we have to ensure to the mayor's point that sufficient lands are made available for 20 to 30 years. That is a requirement. Longer time periods are allocated for infrastructure, public service, and employment lands. That should be employment lands and strategic growth. There is within this, they're removing the concept of healthy, livable, and safe communities and replacing it with complete communities. I thought that was interesting to point out. Next slide, please. So previously, there had been statements such as avoiding development and land use patterns which may cause environmental or public health and safety concerns and promoting development patterns that conserve biodiversity. Those statements have now been removed. So the implication I feel for that is we're going to try to get up as many homes as we can in whatever areas we can. I mean, there's got to be some sort of within reason, but it's when you take those things out of the provincial policy level, it gets a little bit difficult to react at a regulatory level. For under housing, planning authorities are required to establish and implement minimum targets for affordable and low to moderate income households by a full range of housing options. That had been removed under Bill 23. It's been put back. Next slide, please. Settlement area and settlement area boundary expansion. So municipalities are encouraged to, but not required to, set minimum targets for intensification and establish density targets for specific growth areas. So we would pick an area and say, we want to grow here. Here's what our targets are for density, but we're not required to. This lack of requirement of setting targets for, say, like an infill development necessarily implies that if we don't do that, we can have urban sprawl and we'll just continue to go through the greenfields. The next thing is that settlement boundary expansion can happen anytime outside of a comprehensive review. So it used to be that you could expand where your population was going to be, or say this is the housing is going to be in this particular area, but it had to be done under a set of circumstances that would allow it, called a comprehensive review. Now it can happen anytime outside of a comprehensive review. Although it does acknowledge that sufficient infrastructure and public service facilities should be in place. Next slide, please. Strategic growth areas. So they want us to focus on achieving complete communities, encourage a range and mix of housing, intensification and mixed use development, and prioritize planning and investment for infrastructure and public service facilities. So that's a more positive change. Next slide, please. They're also looking at encouraging intensification of employment uses, which is industrial. Employment is a nice word for industrial. And they're trying to make them more compatible with mixed use development, which is probably good news for Perth. We have a lot of industry here. And so typically there's guidelines for separation distances between an industrial use and other uses. But they're sort of looking at how those two can function together in the same area. Next slide, please. So as I just said, it's now easier for sensitive land uses to be near existing planned industrial or manufacturing facilities. So placing a daycare or nursing home closer to an industrial plant, that's an extreme. But they're trying to sort of find a way, instead of the statement that you have to have no potential impacts, it's now just to be minimized and mitigated. So you have to consider things and minimize and mitigate those concerns, but it doesn't have to be full stop. You have to be such and such a distance apart. We need to consider opportunities to allocate or reallocate unused system capacity for municipal water and sewer. So if there's one subdivision that's in a line to be developed, but they're not ready to go and we only have a certain amount of capacity, then we may have to take that and put it to somebody who's already ready to go. Next slide. This one's a weird one, and quite frankly, I'm not sure what to think of it. And we'll probably get some advice on it. But right now it says all official plans and other implementation tools must be brought up to date for this provincial policy statement. But as of now, all development decisions must be consistent with the draft PPS. So even though this isn't passed yet, all the decisions we're making, how I'm reading this, have to be consistent with something that's in draft form. So I asked the planners that question. We were all a little confused. So we're looking for clarification on that. Next slide. Bill 185, Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes Act. This is going to be probably one of the most contentious changes. Bill 23 removed the third-party appeal rights. So neighbors, effectively. Bill 23 removed that right for minor variances, subdivisions, and severances. Under this new bill, third-party appeal rights, so anyone who is not the developer and who is not the town cannot appeal official plans, official plan amendments, zoning bylaws, and zoning amendments. So essentially, any planning application now cannot be appealed by a third party. However, the discussion we've had is that appeals may happen through other forms such as civil suits. So while it might take it away from the Ontario Land Tribunal, it'll just happen in a different way. People will find a way. But that is a pretty contentious one. Next slide, please. Use it or lose it. They are looking at, I found this one interesting too. The province was saying we're going to have lapsing periods required for site plan control. So a site plan control agreement is issued and you have X number of years to do it. That's been in all of my site plan control agreements for years. So I guess some places haven't done it and some places have. Approvals can be withdrawn if it's not completed. And now pre-consultation on development projects is voluntary. So currently we have a bylaw requiring pre-consultation. And I think as we learned last council, it was, you know, this is what you need to do to get here. Those are now voluntary. I can't require that anymore. Not only that, usually there was a 30-day appeal period regarding the planning requirements where they could appeal to the tribunal. I don't agree with your pre-consultation requirements. I'm going to appeal. That was 30 days. Now they can just appeal whenever they want to the Ontario Land Tribunal if they do a pre-consultation at all. So it'll be interesting to see sort of how that shapes things. Next slide, please. Projects exempt from the Planning Act requirements. Now, this is based on decision by the minister. It's not just a full the way it is, but additional residential units, community service facilities, that would be like recreation, police and fire, healthcare, long-term care, schools, and post-secondary institutions are exempt from Planning Act requirements, any Planning Act requirements. So yeah, you know, the thought is you can kind of put them anywhere and you don't need to have the studies to do it. Having said that, the majority of the not additional residential units, that's very concerning, but the other community services, like schools, they have their own planners, they do the work. They do. So it's not quite as concerning as when I started thinking about it. At first I was really horrified. And then when I started thinking about it, a lot of those places have their own planners and that do their own work. So that should be okay. The additional residential units may be a bit more of a challenge, but they are going to be exempt from Planning Act requirements. Next slide. So under the Municipal Act, hopefully I'm getting this right. Susan, jump in if I'm wrong. but there was an anti-bonusing rule where the municipality was not allowed to provide any assistance to a specific business. Changes have happened now to the Municipal Act through this, where municipalities are now allowed to grant assistance directly or indirectly to a specific business for a set period under a certain set of circumstances. So that's a sort of one I don't think anyone expected. Municipal policy on servicing allocation. We're provided with powers to adopt policy for allocation of water and sewer. And we're allowed to now track water supply and sewage capacity, and we can decide where it's going to be assigned or withdrawn or relocated, depending on the scope of when a project is or is not ready, if we so choose. Next slide. Are you guys exhausted? I am.
Discouraged.
Okay, so development charges. So Bill 23 came in and Bill 108 came in with a whole bunch of changes that have now been revoked or altered through this Bill 185. So previously, at the very beginning, we used to, through development charges, be able to use our development charges to have, to pay for studies that go into the development charge of study. That was pulled and they said, now you can't use the money to do background studies. They've put it back. So that's good news for us. They did have a 5-year phase in for development charges. So for the first year, you can only charge, I'm making it up, I don't know the numbers, but 25%. The second year of development charges, it was 50%. The third year was 75%. And the last 2 years, you could charge 100%. Those aren't the right numbers, but you get the point. They've revoked that now. And they've just said you're paying your development charges in full the whole time. And development charge rates can now only be frozen for 1.5 years rather than 2. Changes to public notices. Public notices now recognize that posting to websites is in fact a way of notice. And so they're just kind of reflecting society as a whole. So that's probably a positive one. Next slide. Oh, that's it. Questions?
Joanna, I would like to thank you for your comprehensive overview, and there's so many legislative changes happening. It's almost a full-time job to keep up with it. So I thank you very much for your presentation. It was very, very informative. Any questions or comments, Mayor Brown?
Okay, so the area about settlement boundary expansion and there must be land available for expansion for the next 15 to 20 years. Well, that's sort of a problem here because we don't have any. Do you think they're going to actively enforce that? And even the Carlton Place, I was talking to Mayor Randall, and you know how much building is going on there. Well, they're running out of land and so on. And in subsidiary to that is if by some strange twist of fate, we found land that's currently in the townships on the boundary of Perth, and it says there seems to be more laxity about a boundary expansion than there was before. Would you interpret it that way? So 2 questions.
I didn't want to answer questions about that. I'm not completely prepared to answer that, but I think right now, along with doing sort of the other stuff we've been talking about, the county and myself and members of senior management have been going through and looking at all the vacant lands that are within the town. And you look at them for size and for potential buildability, what the zone is, that sort of thing. And you use per hectare calculation for density. And or you can look at, what are the applications coming in? What do they look like? How much do you think you could put on this land? And so right now we're currently determining how much land we think we have for the next several years. It's part of a comprehensive review that we're working on. And there's also other items that the provincial policy statement directs us to that says you will, for first of all, land should be directed into towns and serviced areas is the first thing. So we'll always be able to have, I think we will always be able to have land because it will always necessarily have to be on services. And so we'd end up expanding our boundaries at some
Okay.
point. I believe. Now I've lost my train of thought. Oh, infill. So the other thing is, I think what we're going to see is a lot of developers purchasing homes that are older, like we're seeing exactly what we're seeing, and then turning into apartment units. And I think we'll get a lot of our growth up before we go out.
So will it be easier to do boundary expansions given this policy?
It should be, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Councillor McCray?
I have three, but I'll keep them short. They're kind of loaded though. I mean, we just did worked on the official plan, and I can just see all kinds of implications. Because the official plan and the provincial policy statement or whatever, they marry together. I guess my first question to Joanna, what do you see as the biggest implication in terms of our official plan in regards to Bill 185?
Well, thankfully, it's not complete yet. So,
yeah, that's
Work in progress.
We're the work in progress.
and I think, I mean, part of it is we knew this was coming already. So I guess we were kind of prepared. There was a PPS 2023 that sort of started down this path. So I think there's still plenty of time to make the changes we need to make. And on top of that, we were kind of waiting for the county to finish their growth allocation study so we could take those numbers that are going to be assigned to us and put them into the official plan. So I actually think we're in a much better place than a lot of places who have just had their official plan passed. Now, if they make another change, I mean, you can imagine how outdated our official plan is with 10 changes having been made since 2021. So I know that our consultant has gone through all of those and made changes. And now based on these changes, we may have to go back and remove some and put some new stuff in, but we have time to do it. And then it still has to be approved by the county after that. So if there are additional changes, we do have time to do that.
If I could just ask one additional, Chair.
Please go ahead.
And that is that Bill 185 removes authority from municipalities from requiring pre-consultation. And that kind of scares me a bit because I think there's a lot of organizations that come forward with good causes and they look to that pre-consultation as a guiding light, I guess you could say. What's your thought on that?
It doesn't remove it. It removes the requirement for it, but you can ask to have one. So I will always give pre-consultations for those who ask. It's interesting. The Conservation Authority had a bunch of changes made to them as well.
Yeah.
And the developer is the only one who has the right to ask for a pre-consultation. The Conservation Authority cannot. So that's like it's really interesting. I've been trying to figure out how those things work together, but essentially all it's saying is a pre-consultation isn't mandatory, but I would be very clear in all communications that would absolutely be something that I would recommend to get through the process in a more efficient and effective manner.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of Joanna?
Thanks.
Mayor Brown, you have a motion?
8.7 is recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth receive for information the update to the provincial policy statement and Bill 185 commenting period as presented in report 2024-COW-7.7.
All those in favor? That's unanimous, passed. Thank you very much, Joanna, for two of your presentations. Moving along to 8.8, as listed, Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moved by myself as recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth authorize the Director of Community Services to submit a grant application to the Inclusive Communities Grants Program for an upset limit of $60,000 for the design and creation of an accessible pathway in Stewart Park as presented in Report 2024-COW-7.8.
Thank you. Do any members of the committee have questions of Kathy?
I don't just have a question.
Deputy Mayor?
I don't want to put you on the spot. Is there a policy that says staff have to come and get council's approval to apply for grants? Do you know when the last time we ever looked at that? Okay. These are the kind of things that I think staff should just be able to go after.
Right.
And not have to write reports to us and all this kind of stuff. I mean, they're the expert. And maybe in the future, we can have that brought up as sometime as a review to sort of say that, because I know we've tried to streamline other things in town, but maybe this is something we could streamline that, because we're never going to say no. It'd be nice to let staff go to do their jobs better, easier.
I will take and Deputy Mayor, Ryan, you had a comment?
Yeah, just a quick comment. There's some of the grant applications that require council approval or support before the application is submitted. So there will be some that we'll always bring to council no matter what.
Thank you. That's a very
Right.
important point. All those in favor? Unanimous, passed. Mayor Brown, 8.9 as listed. Your motion, please.
Moved by myself as recommended by the Committee of the Whole, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Perth appoint Amanda Noel as Director of Legislative Services / Clerk effective, did I skip a line? Interim effective June 1, 2024, and Director of Legislative Services / Clerk effective July 6, 2024, and further that bylaw number 51XX be passed authorizing this appointment as presented in report 2024-COW-7.9.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Unanimous, passed. Does any member of the committee have any questions of our CAO or staff vis-a-vis the reports that they presented to us? Councillor McCray?
They're not questions, they're just a couple of comments. I just have to say that the new platform for citizen engagement that's been launched, I think it's brilliant. And we asked for improvement in communication throughout our municipality, and you've delivered. Very pleased to see that Michael is also chair of the Transportation Association for Canada National Climate Change Integrated Committee. I think that's very advantageous to our municipal climate change group and transportation challenges that were presented here within Perth. That was, and I'm just a comment in regards to Kathy McNally. She's applied for over $370,000 for grants, and this requires a lot of work. And I just want to give my congratulations to her on that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mayor Brown?
Yeah, and note, Michael, that you spent approximately 50% of your time on work regarding the collective agreement. Is that, now that the agreement has reached, is that pretty well finished? You can move on to other things to occupy your time.
Through the chair, that comment was more HR in general, not just the collective agreement. So dealing with human resources and people issues in general, unionized or not.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Just as a comment as an individual counselor, I read all of the staff reports. I find them very informative. And if you don't get a question, it doesn't mean we haven't read them. They're very, very valuable. So thank you very much. Any new business? Our next meeting date will be on Tuesday, June the 4th at 5:30 p.m. And Deputy Mayor Ed McPherson will be chairing that meeting. Do we have any questions from the media? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay. We have no closed session, therefore we have no rise and report from a closed session. I will entertain a motion, Deputy Mayor, for adjournment.
Move by myself that the committee of the whole meeting held on May 7th adjourn at 7:34 PM.